Okay, so we're going to talk about associations between Django models today. And to sort of like build up as a prelude to this, I want to do a little bit of review of what we learned yesterday with validations and our Pokemon. So we're going to go ahead and build up some Pokemon moves, in fact. And the one thing I do want to do is I may have to build out a bit of the Pokemons in here as well. I may just copy some stuff over, but I've done a little bit of scaffolding work. Let's see here. Let's actually do this. So I'll fix the directory names later for organizing stuff in demos and notes, but I should have just copied over like all this stuff from yesterday into this other directory, and I should have my virtual environment directory as well. So in fact, what I think I'm going to do is, I think I'll just put, yeah. So actually, this is a good reminder of when you're cloning and using someone else's Django project, probably the first thing you'll want to do is create a virtual environment. And activate it. And then in this case, I've got a requirements.txt already. I will keep an eye on the assignments to update Django versions as needed to more recent, but as we talked about yesterday, that's a good thing to keep an eye on. And what I don't have installed in that requirements.txt is Django REST framework, because we installed that a bit later yesterday. So let me go ahead and install our requirements.txt. Let me go ahead and install Django REST framework. And let me go ahead and run pip freeze and pipe that into requirements.txt to generate a new one, and just double check that it looks like what I expect, which is awesome. And now I do want to remember whenever we like install really a third-party library that we're using in our Django application, we do have to go into and I think I'll rename these directories later to kind of match the lesson, but we do have to go into our settings py. So let me go ahead and find where that is hiding and add the REST framework for Django REST framework. Now let's actually create another Pokemon app because I want to create some Pokemon moves. Let me make sure I'm where I want to be here. So let's do Python manage py start app, and I'll just call it move app. And we'll give Django and my computer a moment to go ahead and do this. I'm actually surprised it's taking this long. I wonder if my computer is if I need to clear up hard drive space or something. Yeah, and there we go. And so now we actually have these two. Let's see here. Where did my other? Actually, I am not sure that this ran because. Oh, I see. I need to just. I see what's going on. I apologize, folks. I had the wrong sidebar open in VS Code, so it's easy for me to get confused with that. And now I've got what I expected to see. And in fact, what I am going to do is move everything out of there, and delete that other directory. And let's do this dance one more time. Okay. And now I'm properly set up. I apologize. I do like I go a little nuts if like the names of things don't match what they're supposed to be. But where we've ended up now is I created another Django app named Moves for Pokemon Moves. I do have to reactivate and in fact probably recreate my virtual environment. And VS Code is noticing it, which is great. And I actually do want to use it for this workspace. And let's actually just install all the dependencies all at once, just to make sure all this stuff is done correctly. And I'll worry about requirements.txt and all that later. There we go. So now I've cleaned and organized up my development environment. And now we have a Django app for Pokemon Moves. We have the Pokemon app from yesterday, where we have our Pokemon model. And we have the directory for the Django project itself. And because I created a new Django app, I do have to go to install apps, and we do have to add Moves app right here. And so what I can do here is it's a little bit of 6 of one, half dozen of the other when you want to create a new Django app. We could have done all of this work inside one app. It's a little bit more of one of those design decisions that has trade-offs in both directions. However, it's also good to see how like creating multiple Django apps work, and we'll see a bit more with this later. And so here, the plan is, I'm not a Pokemon expert, but my understanding is, Pokemons have different moves. So we're going to create a moves model for different kind of things that our Pokemon can do, and then we'll kind of see how to connect these two models together. And there's a couple things we're going to want to add here to the models file. Django has already helpfully imported this models, and I'm getting the squiggly because it's an unused import, which is good. We'll use that import in just a moment. Sean, yes, sir.
Yeah, Andrew actually pointed out in your installed apps, you put moves underscore app instead of move underscore app. Just don't want to forget about that.
Oh yeah, that would produce a really interesting error for us at some point. Yeah, thank you so much for pointing that out. And I will try to keep a bit more of an eye on the chat. Thank you, Andrew, as well. Let me go ahead and fix that. I'm actually curious. Let's run the server. I'm curious if it would throw an error or not. And it does. And let's see if there's anything in this error that would have helped us figure out what's going on. So with error messages, remember, you usually start from the bottom or the top is where the useful bit is. I'm not seeing anything very useful here in the bottom. To be honest, nor in the top. I think we have better chances. Oh, it is in fact hiding all the way at the bottom of this error message right here. I just didn't even see that part. So it was in fact telling me exactly what I needed right down there. No module named moves app. So if you ever see an error message, module not found, no module named moves app, and Django is using sort of module and app interchangeably here. Like was Python, a Django app is also a Python module. So if we see this, this is a good sign, like check names of installed things, check names in installed apps and settings PY. So thank you so much. Oh, and REST framework absolutely does need to be in settings, and I missed that as well. So we're going to be using Django REST framework very shortly. Now, if I run the server, I'm not doing anything with it. And it says the port is already in use because I probably have some other Python or Django from the other day running on it. And in fact, let me do a quick sweep. And actually, this is a good point. This very well may happen to you. Like if I forget to kill a Django server that I have running or some other server I have running that's using that same port on my system, this is probably the error that I'll get. And there's a couple ways to figure this out. The psau command will actually list all running processes, or rather a number of them. And it looks like I have two Python related things happening here. And my guess would be one of those. There's some other command to see what ports are in use. But that gets a little trickier. I usually just search through the processes for something that looks like what I'm looking for. And this, because I see all this Python stuff, this makes me think I've got Django running somewhere, right? Because Django is a Python program. And I'm pretty sure, in fact, here it is from yesterday. I think this is our pairing app. And let's see if that did it. I could have manually killed this process as well. And I may have to manually kill the other process. But there we go. So that was a little bit of a digression, but a good thing to see as well. And now I've confirmed that I've got this correct, and we can circle back to actually building our moves model and adding some validations and things like that. So let's create a couple Pokemon moves. I probably do want to use a couple validators. So I'm going to import the validators from Django core. I'm going to import from Django core exceptions the validation error message, in case I need to use that as well. The validation error class. And I may create some validators, some custom validators later. But right now, I just want to get this this new model created so we can start to play with it, and we can always add stuff to it later. And the move needs a name. A move should always have a name and should not be null. And I could write a name a regex validator for my move. And in fact, I think I might just write the validator here in models just to get things started, and then maybe I'll move it into a separate file in a minute. So, and this is actually a great prototyping technique. Like there's no, this is all just classes and functions and files. If you want to prototype your validator in your models directory, for simplicity, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. And I am following the guide code from the lesson today for the regex here. I'm not making this regex up on the spot. And what this regex is going to do basically is, I believe, enforce that the name starts with a letter. And I believe what this second part does is enforce that it ends with the letter, but I'm actually not 100%. Or I think this is handling if the name has two parts and the second part is optional. And if someone can break down a bit of what this regex does, actually, that would be awesome. But I'm just going to finish up this validation function. And I'm using a slightly different pattern here where we check if the name is good. And if it is, we return. You can do this either checking for what we want for the happy path, or if you check for the error up front, we'll call that a guard. But so I don't need an else clause or anything like that, because either the name is good and we return and then this function ends, or the name is bad, we don't return, execution continues, and then we raise an error. I'll add a little doc string for my function to make my Python linter happy. And now it's kind of nice. I can just prototype this right here and use it over here in my code. And remember, validators is a list of all of the various validation functions we want to use. Django is complaining because I defined the validation function before, or rather after the class. And so now Python will be happy. Now I think I do want to move this validation function into a new file. So let's see where I am. We're doing this in the move app. So in move app, let's make a file named validators. And let's open that up right here. And now what I'm going to do is grab all of this. Does VS Code actually? VS Code gives a lot of really useful things, but actually like moving stuff into a different file is not one of the things it gives you off the bat.
Hey, I think you're missing a hyphen in that regex.
And someone might have a hot mic.
Oh, yeah. I think you're missing a hyphen on the.
Oh, I'm missing a. Oh, that is not a hot mic. That is just. The mic is very quiet. Can someone maybe reiterate where the hyphen may or may not be missing?
Yeah, I think in your first capture group on line 3 there, the A through Z, then A
Oh,
through.
yeah. Yes. Thank you guys so much. All right. And now let's try go ahead and importing this. And let's see, missing module talk string. Pokemon move validators. And note that now that I moved this to a new file, I do have to import the validation air class as well. And this is one thing to be mindful of when refactoring and moving things to different files. And I, in fact, need to import the regex stuff as well.
Brian mentioned you lowercase the capital Z in the regex.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, let's fix that. Thank you, Clarice, and thank you, Brian. Okay, so that hopefully should be a good regex now. In a little bit, we'll test it out and we'll see if there are any other issues. And you know, to be honest, you saw how easy it is and how many errors I made, not just writing it, but moving it from one file to another. So in hindsight, maybe if I wanted to prototype it in models PY, I should have just left it there till I got everything working and some tests written. And then once I have some tests, I move it into a separate file. And if I do something wrong, the test tells me. So really that is probably the workflow to do. And again, it's okay to prototype stuff and kind of follow the rule of first make it work, then make it right, then make it fast. But let's add a couple more things to our Pokemon move. We've got the name. Let's just add a couple other fields here for like accuracy and I want to say power. I'm actually not sure what all of the Pokemon move qualities are. Something that is very cool to see is that Django has a field type that's actually where it has to be a positive integer. And so it's going to be doing some nice stuff under the hood with SQL for us with this. And let's add a default value of 20. And then let's add some validators. And there's a couple things I want to throw on here. So this is going to end up on a new line. Actually, let's, I forget Python can get a little persnickety with white space. Let's say that accuracy has a minimum of 1. Let's see if Python is happy with this, because this actually, I think, will then make the readability a bit easier. And this is sort of actually, I'll leave this here. So we're going to validate that accuracy has to be at least 1, and we're going to validate that accuracy can be no more than 100. And this is a great example of like the value of these validation functions for defining our domain, right? This makes a lot of sense with Pokemon move accuracy that we would want these limits. What does PP stand for in the world of Pokemon? Can someone actually tell me?
It's like, well, in the games, it's how often you can do the same move in a round or so, I think.
Got it. That totally makes sense. I haven't played a lot of Pokemon, though I've played several other games. So that makes perfect sense to me. That's cool. I wonder what PP actually, probably PowerPoint, Sean. I love it. I think we're lucky that Pokemon does not have PowerPoint incorporated into it. But PP is also going to have a minimum value of 1 and a max of 20. Right. And so again, this is a great example of like how we can use these validators to really enforce the like rules of our system in our models. Let's actually make the PP max. I think in our guide it is 30. And then finally, we're going to add power. And we're making really good use of this positive integer field, which again, I think is super useful. And we're going to add a validator for a max value of 120. And there's a couple squigglies here. I just want to see what they mean. Line too long. Easily resolved. And this one is almost always about white space or having a return character. So that one I'm less worried about. And finally, let's write a string, a dunder string function. So we can get some nice stuff printed out about our move. And I'm just going to add I'm going to do a little copy and paste cheating here. I'm using the sort of Vim plugin for VS Code to do this, but you can do this a bunch of different ways in VS Code. And I'm not sure how many we need, but we'll throw one more in here. And we want accuracy. And we want PP. And we want power. And now we've got a nice dunder string method that can talk about our Pokemon move. So now let's actually, I'm not going to write a test, but what I am going to do is use the shell, the Django console, to just manually test that this works. But first, I am going to make my migrations. And I believe it was plan. Dry run. Right, I haven't actually created it yet. I just did a dry run to see what this will do. Now if I run it again, it's telling me, all right, it created that move model. If I look in my migrations file in the move app, it's right there. Note that the other migrations from yesterday, from the Pokemon app that we created, are in the other migrations directory in the other app. And now Django applies all of the migrations. They're all for the same database, but they're just organized in the different app directories. And let's actually run the migration. And actually, I can use the plan flag if I want to see what it's going to do. And now let's go ahead and do it. Let's make the move model. I think that's a great plan. Awesome. Now let's use the shell and let's play around with creating a Pokemon move and confirming that it works. In the interest of time, I'm not going to write out the tests from the lesson. You might circle back to it later, but I am going to manually test them out here. And we might as well have our capitalizations be correct. Can anyone tell me what step? I know there's a bunch of crap here in the interactive console. Let me clear this in fact. So I opened up the Django console. I've ran my migrations. I want to create a move, but it says name move not defined. What's the step that I forgot to do here when using the Django console?
Import your
You've got it.
models.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Yeah, super easy to forget, as you all saw. So I probably want to do something like Pokemon app models import move. But now I'm getting another error. Can anyone tell me what did I do wrong here?
Is it because it's a move app?
Exactly. So when we import, it's not quite like a directory path, though it does map to that. Really, this is the namespacing, but the namespacing matches the apps and the modules. We need to tell Django the name of the Django app to look in for the models module for that app. And now that should work. And now if I just type move, I've got this move app. And thank you guys very much for the debugging help there. And now, in fact, I can create a new move and get some information about it. I've got my beautiful defaults and everything is working as expected. And if I do new move full clean, we don't have any complaints. So I think that looks good. Though actually, Anthony, yes, sir.
Hey Adam, could you briefly go over what full clean does again?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the bit in the Django docs I always go to remind myself. And this is why I wanted to show you all this. If you search for Django validation and you go to this Django validators right here, and actually I would recommend maybe bookmarking this. I'll throw this in here. Really the file we want, or the bit of documentation we want is in this section under how validators are run. And then we don't care about Django forms. We care about validating objects to see how they're running models. And actually, I'll throw this link in there. And actually, if you want to go straight to the source, this is what I would bookmark or throw in your cheat sheet file. Oh, and I apologize. I'm so sorry, everyone. I had that on my other screen, so none of you saw that just now, I'm assuming. So I searched for Django validation. I went to the second link talking about validators, and everyone can see my browser right now, I assume. Awesome. And then if I scroll down a bit, there's this section, how validators are run. And validating objects is what we care about. And this is the link that I just threw in the Zoom chat right now. So I would bookmark this and also I would start building up a file, honestly, with like all these little tidbits. And like I said, whenever I need to refresh myself, this is where I go. And validation has these 4 steps, right? We validate the specific module fields. We validate the module as a whole. And as we learned yesterday in the code demo at stand down, model clean is actually where we can implement our own clean method, and we can use it to compare fields against each other. Like with the swim exercise yesterday with there were these 2 dates or lap times and we needed to compare them. So this model clean method is meant to be overridden by us. We're meant to implement our own. Then Django, so first Django checks like the validations on individual fields. Then it runs the model clean method, and there's some default model clean method. So if we don't write it, it probably just does nothing, which is fine. Then Django will look at any uniqueness rules for fields, because that involves comparing a field against other stuff in the database that already exists, right? So that's a separate step. And then it will look at constraints, which is stuff around relationships, which is what we're going to learn shortly. So you can do each of these individually, just to show that example. I may have actually gotten something wrong here with my validation. Maybe we should have seen an error, but with my Pokemon move, I can do new move dot, and if you see my terminal hiding in the corner here, clean fields. And let's actually make a newer move. Let's call it bad move. And let me go ahead and clear this. Can folks see my terminal okay? Let me get rid of this for a sec. Let's make a bad move. And I think the bad move will be, the name will be invalid because the name has to just have letters and numbers. So let's call it 1, 2, 3. And I need to set the name right there. So now I've got a bad move, which hopefully will fail validation. And there we go. It does. So I can manually run these 4 validation methods that are on every model. Clean fields checks the individual fields, and that one failed. The clean method we have not implemented, so I don't know if it will do anything. And indeed it does not. There aren't any uniqueness constraints that would be validated that would be broken here. So that again should not throw an error. And then there are no constraints. There are no like relationship constraints. And so when I run full clean, it runs all of these. Right. And then this first clean fields one is what throws the error. So yeah, that's a great question, Anthony, because this is a really good thing to review. Again, I don't like, I've seen this enough where I sort of have it in my head, but I often refer back to this. And again, that's what I would recommend. Like basically, remember that full clean does everything. There are a bunch of steps. And if I need to see like all the explicit steps, this is where I go to find it.
Cool, super clear, thank you.
Yeah, great question. Great question. So we've got a Pokemon move. I've created a couple. Maybe just to wrap, let's build this little serializer. And then I think we'll take a short break and then we'll start talking about associations, which is quite cool, where we can start connecting our models to each other. So let's build a serializer for our move. And I don't think I want to make the same mistake I did a moment ago of like building the serializer in the model file. I think I kind of gave myself more trouble than it was worth there. So let's, in the move app, create a serializers file. And here, let's open it up. And this is more of an issue of I think of I can tell VS Code to like ignore certain things when it searches for things. I don't remember how to do that off the top of my head, and actually I'll follow up with folks on that because that's a good thing, because it's nice when we can just do Command P and start typing the name of what we care about and it shows up and we don't have all this other junk. So remind me and I'll follow up, I think, with how to configure VS Code for that, because that's actually a pretty big quality of life increase. So can everyone see my screen okay with this model and the serializers. Okay, I'll take that as a yes. If anyone needs me to bump the font size up or anything, just let me know. Oh, and Andrew, I see. Give me a sec here. Let's see if I can't deal with my internet connection. Hey everyone, can you all still see and hear me okay? Mic check, 1, 2, 3.
You're good.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and Andrew, thank you for the heads up. So let's build this serializer, and we're going to use Django REST framework that we got introduced to yesterday. And I'm going to give the file or the module a description, because that is what my Python linter extension in VS Code likes me to do. And we're going to do a couple imports. We're going to need to use the Django REST framework. And we're going to import serializers. And then we're going to import our move model. And we're going to use a really simple, predictable name of move serializer. And our move serializer class will inherit from the Django REST framework serializer class. And remember from yesterday, we have to create this meta class and tell it the model that the serializer is for, and tell it the fields that we want it to serialize. And that's pretty much it. I didn't change my model, so I don't have to run any migrations. I'm going to run the shell again and just import from move app dot models, import move. Let me make sure it's there. From move app serializers, and I don't even think I have to import the serializer, in fact. Oh, I apologize. I have it the other way around. We really care about the serializers, and that's what we need to import. And it looks like I have a typo in my file name. So let me go ahead and rename this file. Let's see if this works now. Yeah, so modifying code, the console doesn't pick up on so great. Modifying a file name, yes, because Django is going to be looking at the file every time you want to open something. Let me go ahead and just clear my console. And let's just test this out and just kind of recap from yesterday. Let's use the move serializer. Let's give it some data. We can pretend this is maybe coming from a user's browser. We've got, I misspelled this, but we'll have to live with it. We've got an is valid method for valid format, valid JSON. We've got a save method, and it looks like I did run into a problem here. And I may have skipped a step. I'm not sure if it's worth digging into this right now with the serializer, to be honest.
I think you just have an H on the psychic. Oh, never mind. That's a different one.
Yeah, if I'm looking at this, it's telling me a create method must be implemented. We can sort of, my rule of thumb for sort of debugging and this stuff is like, if we can get it in 5 minutes, then it's worth it. If we can't, then it's not. So that create method actually caught me by surprise. Let's see if we can't find any advice here. And here we go. And this is kind of what I figured, where what this is telling us is if we want to basically have the serializer create a new instance of that model from that data, we need to implement a create or update function. And that's what happens when we call save. And they give a great example here. And we're using this double star, which I believe is some sort of Python quargs thing that basically takes this and turns it into like a list or a bunch of arguments. Does that ring a bell to anyone? And I'm going to actually use this as guide code. And let's see if we can't implement this now real quick. And this validated data, this serializer class does that work of grabbing that and passing it in. Here, I believe that we should also see how the create method gets used. No, I believe it. See, the serializer does that work for us. And really, we just need to return a new instance of our model. And it wants us to use, it doesn't, this Django REST framework serializer docs don't want us to call the constructor this way. I'm not sure off the top of my head why. I actually need to check if there's a meaningful difference between this or move objects create. But a good rule of thumb when you're using like guide code or a tutorial, especially a tutorial, like do it the way they want you to do it to start with, and then if you run into a problem, modify it, because sometimes there's like reasons that are not obvious. And this we can ignore because I think this is more of an issue of VS Code not being perfect with understanding what this move thing represents. So let's see how we do here now that I've added this, if this works or not.
Hey, Adam, I
Yeah.
did look up the difference between the one way and the other, and that .objects.create automatically saves it too. Like it will create it and then save it in one step.
Oh, that is awesome. That is great to know. Thank you, Megan. Yeah, so that makes perfect sense. That then like we would have to do move validated data and then move dot save. But objects.create just combines those two into one step. Thank you so much for looking that up. That's a very good thing to know. That's a great example, folks, by the way, of like you may or may not get asked that in a technical interview, but it's a great thing to be able to describe or mention when it comes up. So let's see how we do here now that we've added this and we've got our psychic move. And I must call is valid before save. That's interesting. Now let's try it. And it works. So this is kind of interesting. It's nice that Django REST serializer enforces this for us. And I can pretty much guarantee that what happens here is this serializer class has some like Boolean class attribute, and it's initially set to false. And when we run this is valid method, if everything is good, it's set to true. And that there's an if statement there doing like a check for that. So now we've kind of gone whole hog with our serializers. And I think this has been kind of like a good review and digging into stuff. Let's take 10 and then let's look at some associations. Let's actually connect this Pokemon move to our Pokemon. Let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen and stop the recording.